Hey everybody, how are you doing? I hope you are doing extremely well. Today I am coming to talk to you about underrated books. Either these books are underrated or they aren't talked about a lot on BookTube, so I just wanted to throw them into the mix. The first book that I want to talk about really comes out of a series that I haven't seen anybody talk about it, at least for a long time, and that is Eragon. I absolutely love this series. My only qualm with it was that Singer and Inheritance, the last two books were like 3 years apart. What is that mess? Basically, this follows a boy named Eragon who finds a hidden treasure which turns out to be a dragon egg, which turns into Saphira, which makes him a dragon rider. Dragon riders are very rare at this point in time, and that egg was thought to be lost, but turns out Eragon got it. The author is Christopher Paolini, and he invented a whole language for this book, and it's a fantasy. It's kind of similar to Lord of the Rings, but a little bit more lower language, so it's a little bit easier to understand, at least for me. If you have seen the movie, no. Just no. The movie for Eragon was terrible because they pretty much got every single plot point wrong, or they completely twisted it to where it was not the same thing at all anymore. It was the most disappointing book to movie adaptation I have ever seen. So much worse than Percy Jackson, so much worse than everything else. But if you are in the mood for some fantasy, this is for you, this series. There's some pretty big honkin' books. Let me grab you see this, it's pretty honkin'. Pretty big, so know that going in, but it's so worth it. The next book that I want to talk to you about is Running Out of Time by Margaret Peterson Haddix. This is a children's / middle grade book. I read it when I was in elementary school, and I absolutely fell in love with it. Basically, this girl lives in older times, like Pilgrim-esque times era, where there's no modern medicine, that kind of stuff. But she finds out her world is not exactly as it seems. If you've seen The Village, that's essentially what this is, but with a much better ending. I couldn't like The Village because it was pretty much a rip-off of this book, but with a more terrible ending that I didn't really like. This book was way better. It's got a very interesting twist in it if you haven't seen The Village and knew exactly what I was talking about, but it's so good. Oh my gosh. Read it, read it. The next book that I want to talk to you about is The Circle Trilogy by Ted Dekker. This is technically Christian fiction. I know, so if you're not a Christian, you might be like, what? But this series is so cool. This guy discovers that when he goes to sleep, he goes into a different world, and when he's in that world, he believes the other world is a dream, and then he goes to sleep and wakes up and then discovers the other world again. So it's taking place in a modern world and then what is a future utopian Earth kind of thing. There's a huge crazy thing happening while he's on modern Earth, and he's trying to solve it while he's in the other world and kind of go back and forth and trying to solve this problem and figure out what is happening in these worlds. There's a lot of Christian-esque stuff in it, but I would say it's about the same amount of parallels as Chronicles of Narnia, so if you've read Chronicles of Narnia, this shouldn't be overwhelming to you. It's not like shove in your face. It's very sci-fi-esque and fantasy-ish. I guess in the other world it's pretty fantasy. There's talking bats, so that's kind of cool. Even if you are not a Christian, it is still extremely interesting to read, so I recommend that to you. The last books that I want to talk about are the Guardians of Time trilogy by Marianne Curley. This is about a group of individuals who are fighting against these agents of chaos, and they go back in time where the agents of chaos have tried to disrupt historical events, and they try to fix it. So there's a lot of magic-esque stuff in it, but there's also historical fiction where they're going back in time and fixing these giant historical events that the Agents of Chaos have tried to mess up. Excuse me, they're called the Order of Chaos, not the Agents of Chaos. Whatever, same difference. There's also some romance in it, you know, some little little romance if you like that. And there's a lot of like fighting and stuff like that. Also, all the characters in these books go to the same high school, so they kind of have to deal with, you know, high school and their other job where they're being awesome. There's also some really cool elements where they get transferred by magic to a building where they learn about the historical era they're going into. They get like everything dropped into their brain and get their clothes, and then they just go. They jump. So if you like fantasy, if you like romance, if you like historical fiction, this series is for you. This is one of my all-time favorite series, and hardly anybody knows about it. I only knew about it from browsing my YA section years ago, and I was like, hey, this looks interesting, and then I fell in love with the series and bought it. So, you know, they're just so good. And those are my underrated / not talked about books. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you want to know anything else about the books, or if you have some underrated books that you feel like I might not have heard of, let me know down below and we will talk about it. That is all I have for you today. I hope that you have a wonderful week, and I appreciate you and thank you so much for watching my videos. You are the best. Bye. And
let's put this back as we go. Maybe, okay.
You know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying.